It's really hard to put your finger on it, but I did some research.
I did a little too. So we're talking about Dune, 1984, because the new one's coming out soon, and I wanted to beat it to the punch because I've seen this. Well, this is the third time I've seen it now, but I've seen it like every decade, it seems like. Or yeah, I saw it in the 80s. Maybe I waited till the early 2000s to see it. Then I saw it again last night, and I was having trouble staying awake. Duke's son leads desert warriors against the Galactic Empire and his father's evil nemesis to free their desert world from the Emperor's rule.
When I was in high school, I read Dune, right? And I've read, I think I've read 3 or 4 of them.
The Frank Herbert, right?
Yeah, Frank Herbert, quite a few. They're dense. They're incredibly complicated. There's all kinds of different things going on, and this is a it's actually like 9 movies that have been tried to compress into one movie, and it's a huge task.
And it's also David Lynch who
It's David
who never
Lynch.
really has a strong focus usually.
It's like this is a movie that would be hard to focus on even if you were really, really good at it. And then you get David Lynch in there. And the thing is it doesn't have David Lynch's feel at all. I think that David Lynch is totally overwhelmed.
It's got a little bit of Blue Velvet in it, I think.
It's a little bit, with the guy with the pustules and stuff like that, but it's the storytelling just completely fucking overwhelmed the guy. It really did.
Speaking of that, Kyle MacLachlan, wasn't he in Blue Velvet? I don't know if I remember right or not, but he's in a lot of. He was in Twin Peaks. He was in a lot of different things. But I think there's a little bit of the. What's the one that David Lynch directed? That followed Twin Peaks. It was like a movie. It was probably the last one. Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Heart.
Like so, Mulholland Drive and like a little bit of Blue Velvet. I think there was some of that feel in there. But I never read the books, and I watched this last night, and it was the third time I'd seen it, and the third time I didn't completely understand everything. I was like,
what is happening?
The thing is this.
But do you need to understand it? Seriously.
It is honest to God. It is the most uneven film I have ever seen in my life, and I wondered about that because there are a couple of things that are done well, and they're so overwhelmed by things that were done bad, and a lot of it comes back to the producer De Laurentiis.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's kind of a cheap mother. He's been known as that. And
well, they spent like what, $40 million or something on this.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is they spent it in the weirdest ways. They spent $2 million just on the shots of the worm, right?
Okay,
and only particular shots of the worm.
Which ones? The ones where he's floating in space, or the ones where he's in that thing?
The
tin can.
No, the sandworms.
The sandworms. Okay.
Sandworms coming up out of that. No, I know the thing that you're talking about. Yeah. I don't know what the hell that was. But the sandworms.
I thought you looked like a worm, kind of with the little arms.
The sandworms coming up out of the sand was a kind of a series of good shots. I mean, they were pretty well done for the time, and they spent $2 million on just those shots, and then they literally spent the next $20 on virtually every other effect.
Do you know where they screwed up? They should have had just like low light, have penises going through the sand, and just made it look like worms.
Right, exactly. But spend all that money on that. And then, like for instance, whenever they shoot, and it's a really terrible rotoscope effect of where the the beams are landing and stuff, and you're like, ooh, that's embarrassing, because you can literally see the blue screen shadows on them. I mean, the worm is going by. They do this great shots of like the worm coming up out of the sand, and then they
when they're on top of the worm too.
And then they're on top of the worm, and that literally looks like something out of Gordon, Flash Gordon. Right?
No,
so bad.
Actually, with the first time he was on the worm, I thought of Flash Gordon immediately.
You had to think, no. There's no way that you couldn't. You had to think about Flash Gordon, right? Oh, man, I got to tell you something. It was just so uneven.
Well, do you know what's weird is I remember when it first came out that I think I was watching Siskel and Ebert, but I remember Ebert was talking about how the graphics or the CGI was kind of cheesy. But I think I should have gone back and watched that, but or found that review.
And it wasn't CGI. It was way back.
He just said it looked really cheesy, and like the effects were cheesy, I think, and that was what the whole point was. But they're not just dated; they're not dated to our look. they're just cheesy.
they're just cheesy. No, you're absolutely right. No, it's like they could have been done better for the time. Honestly, Star Wars did a lot of the same effects and did them really well, but it's the bizarre mix of them that and a lot of times they were using the wrong type of thing for the effect that they were looking for. Like they literally have guys like swinging up to get onto the worm, and it almost looks like they're literally leaning their ladders up against a TV screen, because you just see the worms still going by, and you're going, wow, that's
how's that possible?
It's just a mismatch all the way around, and you're like, wow, it was.
I agree with you. There were some spots that I really thought were gorgeous and like cool, but then there were shots that I was like, what the hell is going on?
That's right. You would see one gorgeous, and whoever did the costumes. I mean, I'm just saying, the Italian opera wants you back.
What's funny is I read some trivia. I actually picked 3 trivia things. I didn't want to overwhelm you with it. Actually, I'll sneak a 4th one in there. But the guy from Star Trek, I'm going to get in trouble for not remembering his name. The bald guy, the Star Trek guy.
Patrick Stewart.
That name right there. He actually said that he thought those costumes were really uncomfortable, but he said his body looked really good in it, so he liked it. I thought that was so funny. That was my favorite quote.
But you see, that's the weird thing about it is that there was not one decent fitting wardrobe.
Oh, well, speaking of wardrobe, so the outfits they were wearing, the guys that were coming out with the worms, the black outfits they were wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what those were made of?
Plastic bags, yeah.
No, they were made of actual body bags that were used, and they were in storage. And I guess they didn't tell the people that were wearing them until after they were done shooting. And they were actually used for bodies at one point. So that just kind of.
Oh.
So that's interesting.
How'd you say?
Oh,
that's you know what? That's an unrecoverable fault right there. When you find out something like that, it changes you. It would have to.
Yeah, it said they were worn by guild members who were body bags that were disused fire station dating back to the early 20s. The bags had actually been used several times, so they didn't tell the cast members until they were done shooting. Oh, that's so funny. And speaking of the worm, that's where I thought of the trivia because you brought up the worm. When they pulled the worm apart and you see those little tendons? Yeah. I thought this was really interesting. They were condoms. I was like, that's perfect.
It's just, yeah.
So they saved money on the condoms, but they've spent money on the...
Weird.
You're right. They were spending stuff on weird things.
And the thing is the book is an amazing thing, and there were some. Well, the thing is there were concepts that
he's an awesome author.
There were concepts that they just didn't get. I mean, for instance, there was a concept that all of our body sweat, is joined into this one.
Right, one pool. Right? Yes, yeah.
And the thing is
it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected, right?
Right. Yeah.
And they just blew that off. And
they kind of showed it, but it was confusing.
They did. They did kind of.
Where they drank the water.
Confusing, and it was it was such a pivotal part of of the book itself. And believe me, I'm the last person in the world that's going to compare a book to a movie. They're two separate things, except for
well, I was relieved
when you can't read the movie.
Yeah, I was relieved when I was like, I didn't read the book, so I was like going in not really remembering anything about the movie. So I was watching it, but I was like, I think they just picked a theme and said, okay, we're going to talk about the politics of fighting over, a natural resource, spice. Well, and we're going to have blowjob lips, the blowjob lips girl doing the narration, Virginia Madsen. She has those sweet lips. Let me tell you about the history of Dune.
But anyway. And the other aspect of it that was amazing is the obviously laid in thoughts of every person that are, and some of them actually can communicate, by thinking. And
yes.
and they just kind of I think that they waited until the whole thing was done, and then they just kind of threw those in to try and knit together the story.
But they couldn't hear each other all the time, right? I mean, that's what I was like, what? Why am I hearing everybody's thoughts all the way through the whole thing?
Why am I hearing everybody's thoughts? I wish that they would shut up, because my it's my brain speaking to your brain and saying, please shut the fuck up and do it now.
Well, one good thing about seeing this is
it's a hard film to review, because
but you got some good actors. I mean, you had Patrick Stewart from Star Trek, and you have the Linda Hunt with the glasses, the lady.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And you know who else you had? And you had Kyle MacLachlan's hair, which was obviously on another contract.
Yeah.
His hair was doing its own acting all by itself.
And I've always liked that Brad Dourif guy. Just because he looks so weird.
But here's the thing: is that why did Kyle MacLachlan be the one that had the weird hair, right? It's like, my God, they did everybody else's hair pretty well, right?
Well, wasn't he friends with David Lynch? I mean, have you seen David Lynch's hair?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know what? That is a very good point.
He's been in a lot of David Lynch movies. I have a feeling they're buddies. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they just
hey, what are you using your hair?
Hey, I want my hair to look
bacon grease. But Virginia Madsen, since we just did Candyman, it was kind of nice to see her have a tiny part in this.
Yeah.
She did, actually, she had the best gig. She narrated it, and she just stood there in a couple scenes looking pretty, didn't say anything.
Yeah, wasn't she was the mother, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was the.
Yeah, she was her role. Although let's face it, it isn't that they took one aspect of the story and tried to tell it. That is not the problem. The problem is they took one aspect of the story and then tried to tell it, except for in all those other ways that everything else intersected across it, right? So you kept getting these like tangents, like, okay, here, tell me this, all right? Why did they kill Linda Hunt?
Right. Well, they had so many characters. How do you follow?
They're just killing them off left and right. And
how do you follow the characters, though?
Yeah, you can't follow. Well, who killed that person?
Well, they did a good job following Paul, who Kyle MacLachlan played. His character.
Yeah, no, they really did. At
least we had that anchor to kind of carry you through the story. I was looking at that too. They had a total production crew of 1,700 people. And 80 sets were built on 16 sound stages, and it took more than 6 years. The writer, David Lynch, worked for 3.5 years.
Was there somebody just to jerk Sting off?
Sting. By the way, whose idea was it? Let's grease Sting up and put him in this little G-string thing.
Put him in a Cupid outfit.
And have him pop out.
That was a Cupid outfit, right?
And you see how he just kind of like...
I know, and he's just, and not only that, the weird thing about it is they kept talking about his character like he did something, and he never did. He just kind of like, walked. He kept walking across the set like.
Well, the other guy the redheaded guy was, they're from the same place, so maybe that makes sense. But
you know what was kind of cool? I have to say, it was kind of cool. was the guy that floated, the big fat guy.
Oh yeah, the float, the Baron. Yes,
the Baron. His floating around. Of all the damn things that you had to do halfway right, why was that one of them? Right? I mean,
that was Kenneth McMillan. Yeah, it was awesome.
Actually, it looked really kind of cool. And you're going, well, why did they? How is it that they did that right and hardly anything else? What a weird ass film, man.
Well, the
what
best thing,
weird.
I guess the only thing he got right was that it had a certain tone that was consistent, and it was interesting to watch, but confusing. And
it did have a very gilded steampunk kind of look to it, didn't it?
Well, don't you think David Lynch is always good at setting at the very beginning? This is the tone of the movie. Like, it doesn't really change; it just kind of stays there,
right?
And it makes you kind of uncomfortable usually.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, that's why I said, yeah.
I kept stopping. I had to stop it last night because I had spent all day working, packing stuff and cleaning stuff. I was so tired last night, and I was watching. I'm like, okay, I watched 30 minutes, and I'm falling asleep. I'll stop, and then I'll pack up. I'll clean this table over here, and then I'll sit back down and watch another hour.
Honestly, I have to tell you the truth is I actually watched the whole thing in real time with my wife, and both of us like. She goes, at one point she goes, is this really long film? You know? And I said, and I go, I had heard that it was like 3.5 hours. And then I looked and it's 2 hours long. And I thought, oh, what they meant was it feels like it's 3.5 hours.
Well, there's probably a version that's 3.5 hours where they probably have scenes they took out of it.
Well, here's the thing. This is what I'm saying is we basically, we didn't time. What's the opposite of time jumping? We time tripped.
Right.
We time tripped into that film.
Crawled.
And so if we wanted to live longer, I am saying that all we need to do is keep this running on a loop in the background, and we're easily going to double the years that we have left.
Well, I want to know, would this have been better if it was like a trilogy type thing, like the Lord of the Rings? Like if they would have broken it down into parts rather than have one big, all this stuff crammed into 2 hours.
What? I don't know how they would do that. I don't, because having read the book, and this is the 500-page book Dune. Having read it, I think I've read it twice. I don't know how they would break it up. It is one of those things which I think filmmakers are going to throw themselves at every 20 years and not succeed. Because I just don't know how you can tell such a complicated story. It's here's another. There's Foundation is coming out, and they at least they did Foundation as a series. That's another.
Series.
Isaac Asimov's huge epic tale.
Right.
So
yeah.
We're gonna see. My son says that it's really, really good.
Well, I want to see that too.
And he says, and it looks really good. And I go, oh, really? Stacked against Dune, though.
Well, it's too bad. Well, even David Lynch, another little tidbit I found was that David Lynch has always been kind of he doesn't want to talk about this movie in public. I guess when it came out, he was just like, it was okay. It was one of his flops, I think, is what he was thinking. So, but I think his career kind of, for me,
because it actually was one of his flops.
Well, I like David Lynch up to the point where Mulholland Drive comes out, and I kind of mildly like that. And then after that, I'm not really interested. It's everything before that is the bomb. I don't get it. Sorry,
I don't know.
David.
Never been one of my favorite filmmakers.
Well, I like the early, really bizarre stuff from the 70s and 80s. That's just kind of out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he started taking some like drugs or something, like in the 90s. Maybe he took some, like, you know, to de-stress. Maybe he was stressed out.
I always thought that David Lynch was a pretty good cautionary tale. You know, it's sort of like Tobe Hooper. It's sort of like Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that was an incredible film. And then he just spent a lot of time being Tobe Hooper. I mean, even by the time that he did Poltergeist.
Right. No, I get what you're saying.
By the time that he did Poltergeist, everybody was trying really, really hard to get it away from him, right? You know? So there are certain directors that I think are, you know, kind of like that, you know? I think that Lynch's kind of a beautiful train wreck.
Yeah. So he's kind of like Quentin Tarantino, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's almost like a Quentin Tarantino just started making mellow, straightforward movies rather than the stuff he's making already. You know what I mean? Like, if he really changes, I think Lynch kind of changed his style somehow. I don't know. It's weird.
Quentin Tarantino, just almost every one of his films has so much merit to it, right?
Yeah, no, he's amazing. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about his films.
David Lynch is sort of like there with Tobe Hooper. It's like, yeah, you know, we came out and we made a big mark at the very beginning, and then we were just too busy being ourselves, you know?
But Twin Peaks was pretty awesome. That was a pretty awesome show, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I don't know if he won awards for that or not, but
yeah, but
that started being more normal. You see what I'm saying? Like, his early stuff is just, what the f***? And then he's like, now it's just like, oh, okay, this guy got murdered, we're going to investigate into kind of a normal movie now. It's like, is he on antidepressants now? What's going on? Anyway, so I like the people that are crazy train wrecks, I guess.
Yeah, the thing is you know, crazy train wrecks, you get Dune, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Well,
I don't quite know what that is, but that's what I'm saying is, I don't know.
It should be an animated series. Actually,
how much of that ever? I don't know that there was enough room amongst fucking up the story. How much room he had left to make it look like David Lynch? You know what I'm saying? I would never have given David Lynch something this
you can't look at this
to do in the first place.
Right, you can't look at this and say, "Oh, that's David Lynch," and it doesn't have a signature on it. That's what
I'm saying. There's no signature on this whatsoever. I mean, De Laurentiis is kind of. It looks like something like something De Laurentiis would screw up instead of something that David Lynch would screw up.
Right? Yeah. Well,
I didn't screw that up. David Lynch did.
I hope I'm right about this, but I think David Lynch turned down Star Wars, the third one, I think.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, that's your thing, George." You know, it's like, and so he tried to do Dune, which I mean is nothing like Star Wars. Which actually, that's okay. There's one thing I liked about this is that it looks like nothing else. I mean, really, there's only certain parts that you can say, "Oh, that part looks like Flash Gordon," but the look of it and everything, it's so different than anything else I've seen. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? Just ask that coroner who's waiting for those bags to come back.
Oh, you think they loaned them?
Hey, wouldn't you?
Oops, one still has a body in it.
We spent $2 million on this worm, so I'm going to have to borrow these.
What'd you think of the little tin can that came out with the slime dripping out of it and the creature with the two vaginas talking?
Yeah, God. Yeah, I don't know what that was. I mean, it was an awful lot. It was an awful lot just for that. You know what I'm saying? And this is another part of the placement problem in here, right? Is you had the entire crew dressed in their corpse bags coming into the room that was completely gilt. They were driving a 1920s bus that had been fitted out, you know, for gaseous creatures
right.
that spoke through vaginas. And that's an awful lot. You know, here's what I'm saying.
Well, there's David Lynch right there in that little tin can.
Yeah, I know, but they walked away from that scene going, well, that's $500. That's $5 million well spent.
Well, they saved money on brooms because as the thing was going away, there was one guy sweeping up the slime.
One guy that was, which somehow or other, the guy with the broom sweeping, you know, in his corpse pants. Somehow that was so framed into my head as I watched them disappear back into the room and him with the broom there like that. And I was like, wow, somehow that ties it up, because here's the thing is at the end they spent $5 million on the vagina speaking, orange breathing trolley aspect of it. That they were like, listen, could you guys clean up on the way out, because we really can't even afford a janitor in here.
We only have one broom.
We only have one, and we only have one broom.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Because and here's the thing is, it just looked like literally a broom that you got from the closet. It's like, brooms haven't changed that much, you know, especially considering that this isn't even the same universe as ours, right? I guess we found the universal constants.
Yes.
The universal constant is purely janitorial. It isn't part of physics as much as it is part of AD
There you go. That sums it all up. So I would rate this. You're probably gonna ask me that. Well, I only have one more scene that I wanted to point out, which I thought was gonna be a joke, because the way they said it, don't forget, remember the tooth. And I was gonna say, like, what is it? You know, the tooth will set you free or something.
Right. Remember the stupid. It's God. And like I say, the problem is with this film is that the things, it's just a random assortment. It's like somebody just read every 10th page of Dune.
Right.
Read every 10th page, and whatever was there, they pulled something out of it, right? You know? So you know, Bob was the writer that was covering 10, you know, every 10 pages. And he hit the tooth right on the net.
It was David Lynch and Frank Herbert wrote the novel. David Lynch wrote the screenplay, so maybe he was in a windy. Maybe he was living in Chicago and his window was open all the time, and it just kind of blew around. And he. What page was I on? Oh, there it is.
Well, look at all these pages everywhere. Oh, boy, I gotta tell you.
For me, it's I think. Well, I did like some stuff about it, so it's hard for me to give it less than a 2. I think.
Yeah, I have to give it like a 2.3 because just the train wreck aspect of it.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I mean,
I can't figure out why I liked it though. The last time I watched it, I liked it more than I did this time.
Oh yeah, well, the thing was really apparent this time for me, and like I say, I saw it when it came out in the theater. The thing that really became apparent to me was the incredible disparity in how they spent the money. I mean, now I know how you spend money so that so that you don't have guys in the future commenting on things like how you spent the money. See what I'm saying?
No, I get it. Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, really? You know, the and you're right. And the tooth and the janitor.
Remember the tooth. It'll set you free. Well, I was waiting for a punchline. I'm like, okay, that took me way out of the whole scene. I was like, what's the joke? Where's the punchline?
Yeah. And where were we at that point, right? You know, you go, where were we? I mean, let's face it. when you introduce that many characters at the very beginning, and it kind of becomes a race as to how you're going to get rid of at least half of them. I mean, look at how many people were still standing for that scene at the end, right? It's like you killed off 30 freaking people that were actual people that you had introduced, right? And there were still 25 or 30 left, you know, in the last scene.
I think some of the people that were dead weren't really dead.
Well, you think?
Possibly, I don't know.
Anyway, I would say 2.3, just because it must have cost at least $100 to make.
Yeah, it really do research on this if you just want to have some interesting stuff. Because I was blown away by some of the trivia and some of the things I found about David Lynch.
This was made in North Carolina, right? It wasn't made here. It wasn't made in Hollywood. I think De Laurentiis his thing was that he was shooting, you know, East Coast. Because I got to tell you, I was in town at that time. Don't remember seeing anything, any of these great sets or.
Well, yeah.
I mean, if there were 30 enormous sets like that around town, you would have seen them somewhere.
Well, it said they made 80 sets built on 16 sound stages.
Yeah. Well, they
where were these sound stages?
Yeah, I don't think it was L.A. Could have been, but I don't think so.
Well, I was just excited about the condoms. That's all I needed.
The tooth. Well, I just wanted to get to the tooth.
Right.
The tooth of the matter.
Well, it's just like a bad dental joke. I was waiting for it, but oh well.
I think Toby Hooper put it best when he said, "Oh,